Sophie Pemberton was born in 1869 in Victoria, in what was the colony of British Columbia. From 1896 to 1904, she had her own studio in London, England, and both there and in Paris had a wide circle of international artistic friends. She took further study in Italy. Pemberton began to build a strong record of international exhibition at the Royal Academy and the Paris Salon, and represented Canada at world expositions. All of this activity interspersed by visits home to Canada. She chose not to sell several works for which she was most proud, and these now represent the principal corpus of her career. As such, they demonstrate a realist academic competency that moves beyond into a more modern, freely conceived post-impressionist style. The standard interpretation is that she married in 1905. Her public artistic career ended, but very little research has been undertaken to learn exactly what happened to her after this point. 4 years later, at age 40, she and her husband and 3 stepchildren moved permanently to England. Moving to England, combined with a surname change, meant that she now effectively disappeared from the eyes of the Canadian art-going public. She would not return to Canada as a resident until 1949 at age 80. Only a handful of canvases from 1905 to 1930 have surfaced, but surely there's more to her story, and particularly during this period of huge social change. Some of her own personal records help us to learn about these years, including Pemberton's small, pocket-sized diary covering the years 1918 to 1922, in which she briefly recorded some aspect of each day of the year. It functioned as an aide-memoire. Each page holds one calendar day, and that page contained lines delineated for 5 successive years, one beneath the next. Enough space for a sentence or a phrase for each day. Sophie Pemberton wrote in these small spaces most days, sometimes with retroactive entries, but generally penned each day as it occurred. Occasionally, she might overflow the allotted spaces, weaving words around the margins or squeezed alongside previous entries. Comparison of entries on the page for a specific day in successive years enabled Pemberton, and now ourselves, to review one year to the next and note patterns around fixed dates or reoccurring events, and to search for hints about how she responded to social and cultural changes. In the absence of earlier diaries, we are not able to judge shifts over the longer period or even understand all of her notations, as they were abbreviated moments in being. As Carolyn Steedman observed with some frustration, you find nothing in the archive, but stories caught halfway through, the middle of things, discontinuities. This is certainly the case with a pocket diary, and especially one that is standalone. Diaries have silences, what is not said or actualized or expressed. And in Pemberton's cases, these silences beg questions. In February 1917, the year before the diary begins, she was seriously injured when the dog cart she was driving was struck by a lorry. And then a few months later, she was widowed. The year after her accident was long and slow and pain-filled. Headaches and bodily weaknesses debilitated her. Supportive friends and a variety of health practitioners got her through it. But many of the notations for 1918 and successive years referenced doctor appointments, reoccurring symptoms. Sophie's health paralyzed her activity and her creativity. An older friend, neighbor Victoria Sackville West, coaxed her back into painting, albeit working on domestic interiors, not canvases. Pemberton records each day she attended her friend's home, hired to reimagine room interiors, painting furniture, walls, flooring, and staircases. Sophie's skills, thus redeployed, opened up new options for her. Instead of a career as a portrait painter, she now learned about plastering, fabric painting, and beadwork. Inspired by plaster decoration and painted furniture in some of the great houses she visits, articles in magazines, and the examples of women artists such as American Mina Loy, who designed lampshades and household pieces. She most certainly knew of Roger Fry, who established the Omega workshops to remove what he considered to be false divisions between the decorative and fine arts, and of former art school colleague Vanessa Bell, whose work was shown there. Small designs scattered on the diary pages include notations on colors, bright, bold colors, not the soft pastels of contemporary room decor. She mentions mythological and Chinese in her descriptors, exploring an artistic past that was not her own heritage. She also transformed her own domestic spaces, purchasing aniline dyes and shellac for painting plaster surfaces. The door and walls of her bedroom were described as painted with quaint designs copied from old Persian manuscripts. If modernism in art brought new alignments to the experience and values of modern industrial life, Pemberton's choice to utilize an Oriental style and mythological subject matter in her decorative designs with an emphasis on rich detail and color, employing busy Baroque-style interventions certainly runs contrary to this idea. Decorative work pleased her, its challenging variety. It enabled her to take control of physical spaces surrounding her and have the knowledge that through sales, she also had an impact on the surroundings of others. Decorative work was far removed from the academy and without the pressure of or submission of paintings and juries. The small pieces she could work at home at her own pace. So if headaches interfered, she did not have to explain to models or bring herself home when working on plein air. By 1919, her tea trays, glassware, and furniture, painted with magnificent birds, butterflies, intertwining flowers, and other vegetal motifs, were sold in small shops. In 1921, while on extended visit to Victoria, she designed and created a Persian thematic decor for the grand opening of a high-end women's clothing shop. The confidence to change her artistic focus may have been aided by changing expectations for women in the larger context, but how she changed and what she chose was dictated by her personal circumstances. But Pemberton was also drawn into the social world of the exuberant Sackville West, notably during the latter's friendship with architect Edward Lutyens, who was an inveterate punster, even quoting some of his puns in her diary. She attends teas, dinners, and other social events, mixing with aristocratic guests, meeting political appointees, diplomats, and larger-than-life personalities, enlarging her own social world and her own social capital. She marries again in 1920, after falling unexpectedly and quickly in love with an older widower. With her second marriage, she saw an opportunity to close the gap between gendered pursuits. With some trepidation, she purchases stout shoes and tweed skirts, waterproof jackets, and begins to accompany him on fishing trips. It is only then, in late 1920, that she records taking a sketchbook. The diary does not mention resuming painting in her previous manner until 1921, while on a world tour, she painted landscapes and exotic locales. The diary also reveals complexities in how we might categorize her interests or how they might reflect the times. She reads spy novels, Henry James, Kipling, yet also modernist writers Gertrude Stein and Vita Sackville West. She enjoys the poetry of Yeats, whom she may have met in Ireland in 1897. She reads artist biographies and philosophical literature in French, Italian, and English. She attends a lecture by Annie Besant and afterwards summarizes in her diary, "Talked poisonous nonsense." She sees political plays and notes them as such, and those addressing the roles of women and patriarchy. She reads newly published essays on spiritualism, quotes the Bhagavad Gita, and then, to rid oneself of the conventions, etc., that surround doctors, undergoes experimental psychotherapy as a cure for her headaches, which is successful. The modern symbolism of Holman Hunt, Regency portraiture, and Matisse rate mention, and the artist whom she knows personally. She records attending the Royal Academy each year and other galleries more regularly. She keeps up. In photographs of Pemberton, we also see a transformation in her attire from Edwardian tea gowns to Chinese panel skirts and jackets, to ballet russe inspired turbans and opera jackets, to cloche hats. She is nothing if not eclectic in taste and interests, reminding us how individualistic the absorption of new ideas can be, and of the comfort of the known, and of the many influences and impulses at play in us all as we move through a cacophony of competing or contrasting ways of thinking. This small diary presents a first-person snapshot into 5 key years in Pemberton's life via brief daily in-the-moment entries. It's particularly useful alongside other archival sources, but nevertheless, on its own, provides personal insights, corroborating, as Samantha Burton has observed, that the spaces of modernity are mobile, relational, and in flux. It is also a beginning point in recovering her overseas life and her continuing artistic journey. Later, returning to Canada in 1949 at age 80, she proclaimed on the ship manifest her occupation as artist. Thank you.